Welcome to an hour of HealthMade Radio. HealthMade is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. A core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. HealthMade Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I will be your host. Today's guest is Noa Belling, author of The Mindful Body. International best-selling author and psychologist Noa Belling uses her many years' experience of intellectual and physical discipline to guide others in enhancing vitality and life fulfillment. Noa holds a master's degree in somatic body-mind psychology through Naropa University. Her background includes over a decade of teaching applied somatic psychology skills as part of psychology training and continuing education programs, running a private psychotherapy practice and presenting talks and workshops in the corporate sector. Noa's first career as a professional ballet dancer and then a yoga teacher also influenced her approach to well-being. She is a best-selling author of The Yoga Handbook, Yoga, a Union of Mind and Body, and Yoga for Ideal Weight and Shape. Her books have sold hundreds of thousands of copies worldwide and are translated into many languages. And today we're going to talk about her newest book, Mindful Body. Noa, it's such an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
From your perspective, what is the relationship between the body and the mind?
I see the relationship and mindfulness as two directions or two paths. The one is the body is an absolute expression of the mind. So if we think a thought, like right now, if I invite your listeners and yourself to think a thought of worry, for example, maybe furrow your brow and notice what happens in your breathing and notice what happens with the tension levels in your body. And now think a thought of your happiest person, your happiest place, and notice how hopefully your body can start to ease and open and soften. This relationship is the one side of it where your body is an expression of your body, of your mind. And not only that, actually, there's a lot of research showing us how your body is highly influential over your mind. So simply changing your posture, like if you slouch, if you were to try this out now and your listeners, now try to feel happy. How did that go? And then raise your posture to stand tall, keeping your head up high, taking a deep breath, and now try to feel sad. And this is not a trick question. It's really a great way to know the difference, the signal from the body to the mind that when our posture is communicating something, our brains are actually tricked into feeling certain ways. And that connection, there are more nerve pathways that run from the body to the brain informing us about how we are and what's going on in the world and how we should respond than from our brain to our body. So I find that really fascinating. And if I may add just one more piece about mindfulness and the body, is that because whenever we take our attention into our body, we automatically come into the present moment. Because our bodies, the only aspect of ourselves that can live in the past or the future is our minds, our thoughts about reality. When we come into our sensations, to noticing our breathing, noticing our body, it's a wonderful and quite easy way to access a more mindful, more present way of living life. So those are a few different ways to look at mind to body through the thoughts that we think, body to mind through our posture, and also the body as a wonderful route to becoming more mindful when we can live in our bodies more so than in our minds for various beneficial reasons.
So you're, and I know in one of your chapters as well. I mean, you're talking about where you gave an example right now, where you can then change your posture, and with that, then you can change your mind. So you can actually then control how you're feeling, how you're thinking, by simply changing your posture.
Absolutely. So in that chapter, it goes a little further to link to certain personality characteristics and how, for example, we used the upright posture earlier. If you were to add your hands on your hips, really open your chest, there is some research that has been a little bit controversial, but nonetheless it was significant, by Amy Cuddy, that Harvard University research that showed that 2 minutes of opening your posture, she calls it power posing, opening your chest, standing tall with maybe your hands on your hips or even your arms behind your head with your elbows open, really breathing into your chest for 2 minutes, increases your testosterone, which is your confidence hormone, and decreases your cortisol levels, which is your anxiety and worry. And so that's just another way that our mind and body, it can be really interesting to, and I see it sometimes as playful and fun to begin to learn, wow, I can just stand like that. So I'll, for example, suggest that if I have clients who are about to go in for interviews, I might suggest that they sit and really breathe into their chest, open their upper bodies up nice and wide for a couple of minutes before they go in to strengthen and bolster their confidence.
And that actually then...
Would you like me to give you a couple more examples?
I would love to.
Or do you have a question?
No, that I would love to. Well, so that actually then, they've seen that increases your testosterone level just standing in that posture?
That's correct. That's 2 minutes in her research. And there are plenty other research. There's plenty other research that shows, for example, if you hug yourself and rub your arms, your hands up and down your arms, or use any self-supportive touch. In my book, I speak about a hand over the heart or to the center of the chest. If you try that out, notice how that begins to perhaps soften your view on reality, maybe bring you a little more in touch with your feelings. The hormone that is increased when we do this is oxytocin. Oxytocin is proven to increase in a few seconds through the touch of our hands or through touch, nurturing, caring touch from another person also. So the research I find nice add-ons to what can be really common sense knowledge if we try this differential between these two. And there's another 2 examples I use as well in the book. But let's get a sense of this really common difference. Place your hands on your hips and really inflate into your chest to stand tall. If you were to hold that for 2 minutes, according to Amy Cuddy's study, your saliva would show the increase in testosterone and the decrease in cortisol. And if you were to place a hand on your heart, just like politicians might use artificially to convey greater sincerity, I've heard in various public speaking approaches, they recommend it, and it actually does work. Placing a hand on your heart or rubbing your hands down your arms wakes up our sense of almost feeling more intimate towards ourselves, softening towards our vulnerability or our emotions. And it's a great way to calm our stress hormones. In one section of the book, I look at stress and body first aid, ways to, for example, use self-supportive touch to intervene in those seconds when our stress hormones really flood our brains, and to be able to calm our system down enough so that we can think more clearly. So there are many applications. Does that make sense, that link between our physical body, our posture, and how we feel, and then science that supports it? I find that just a wonderful add-on to have what really is common sense.
So it's because we always think that the brain is the one that runs the show, but here it almost seems like you're using then your body to reprogram your brain and shift your emotions, your feelings, and how you present yourself to the world mentally and emotionally.
Absolutely. And the beauty of that is we don't have to figure anything out. We can use up a lot of energy and often not find answers by trying to figure everything out in our brains. We tax our thinking quite a lot in the way that we live life. And there is value in thinking, of course. Although when we can come from a calmer, clearer place, and our bodies can really help us access that place, our brains can think so much more clearly, and we can access more of our brain. Again, the research is just mounting about the wonderful benefits of that calm, clear, and loving space that opens us to our brain in a really optimal way.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Noa Belling. She's the author of The Mindful Body. We'll be right back. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Noa Belling, and we're talking about how the body and the mind is connected, and we can actually change your postures in order to be able to impact your mood, how you're thinking, your emotions, and even your hormones. So I'm curious, Noa, you were talking about how we could actually increase testosterone and oxytocin, but then you have these other hormones that control, like depression and anxiety, like you have dopamine, serotonin, GABA. Are they impacted as well?
Absolutely. So I use, from the Change Your Posture, Change Your Mind chapter, I refer to 4 different postures, and they tend to influence us differently. So we have the upright posture as your testosterone booster. We have the self-supportive touch or hand to the heart as your oxytocin booster, your self-love, self-nurturing. You have then also, I use the victory pose of placing your hands up in the air and really opening your hands up to the sky as if in celebration. Or it also works to really just shake out your body and loosen out your body. You might give it a try. And that more fluid motion is linked with increasing dopamine. There's again a number of studies that show the connection between fluidity, bringing some movement to your legs, bringing some movement to your arms, and that increasing your ability to be creative. And it has an energizing effect, helps you potentially see things differently, can give you a greater sense of freedom. So that's the one that I like to use as I'm writing. When I find myself really fixed and staring at the screen and a little bit stuck, I might just pause and either stand or sit and just shake out my body. Or if I want to really get that sense of reaching, I might just raise my arms up and stretch my hands to the sky. And that reminds us, again, tricking the body, that we are victorious. Dopamine is all about it's our reward and motivation system. And simply by lifting our arms up, and I'm not sure how that might have felt with you if you want to share, simply lifting your arms up to the sky can feel victorious. Like, wow, I've won something, even when I've not necessarily done that. So it can be a great way to motivate yourself, as well as to really gather and grow your sense of success and your celebration of it by physically enacting it. So there were those 3. And the 4th one, which is your serotonin booster, I use in the book the hands in a prayer pose. In truth, anytime we become more centered and more grounded, serotonin is boosted. And there are very many ways that you can look at it. For example, meditation slows our body down, helps us feel more grounded. And serotonin is largely produced in the gut area. As you imagine, perhaps placing your 2 feet on the ground, placing your 2 hips on your feet, placing your hands together in a centered pose. It almost drops our our center of gravity downwards, and might even have a relaxing effect on the belly. And these have been also linked, for example, through meditation. And there's also a link with good quality sleep, to be able to be relaxed, to be able to feel grounded. That's really boosting of our serotonin. And there are many other, I focus on those 4 in this book. There are many others that benefit. This is a simplified way to say, here are 4 postural shifts that you can explore that can help you. For example, if you're feeling really scattered, you might simply place your hands in a prayer pose, or place 2 feet on the ground. And that grounding can calm and center your energy. It can also turn a stress response into a more mindful response in a matter of seconds. And there's the link also with the serotonin, and that is really just that calmer, clearer, more relaxed way of living. I see serotonin like your calm, centered, inner happiness, as opposed to dopamine, which is more of an extroverted, out in the world, excited happiness. So that's how I see they both linked with happiness, and they have a different way of expressing themselves, more calmly serotonin and more excitedly, exuberantly, or dopamine. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I
easy
think
enough to understand?
Yeah, no, I think it's just incredible to be able to have these kind of simple tools that are very user-friendly. They don't cost anything. They just take a couple of minutes to do. And it can just shift your whole outlook on life, on that day, in that moment. That's extremely powerful.
I find that absolutely. And empowering. We all have access to it. Everyone has a body, and everyone can access these qualities, even if our physical abilities might be limited. Let's say we're in a wheelchair. We can absolutely still access the qualities. There are more qualities in our body rather than physically being able to stand on our feet even, or move our bodies in a particular way. For example, strength is really just that breathing into our chest and facing the world with a sense of pride and strength, and that oxytocin and that warm, supportive touch can be accessed by everybody, as with the others. They're simply qualities, really accessible. I agree with that.
So the oxytocin, I mean, we live in such a disconnected world. I mean, a lot of our communication is done digitally, through our phones, laptops, etc. And so we're not. We feel isolated while we at the same time, think that we have a reach to the whole world, but we're isolated because we don't have that physical connection anymore. So by just that touch, that physical touch, even if it's just kind of like you said, you're stroking your own arm, that will then help to raise that oxytocin to increase the connection.
Absolutely. And the more we can balance the big conversations going on in the world about how much is enough screen time, for example, with children. And I love the conversations that turn that around and say, let's ask, have you had enough quality time face-to-face with the people that are important? Have you had enough of a sense of the experiences that can ground you in yourself, that can help you feel more relaxed, more connected, more healthy? And when we can make sure we insert, in my book, I call them mindful body moments. These are all the kinds of interventions that I've mentioned already, these really simple things that we can do. If we include even 30 seconds a few times in our day, it can really increase that vitality. It can optimize our brain's function. It can help us feel more connected to life because, as you say, depression can easily set in, and all sorts of other negative consequences that can affect us on all levels.
And it really shows how important, as a parent, how important it is to hug your children and touch your children.
You're welcome to ask any further questions about that.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with author Noa Belling, author of The Mindful Body. We'll be right back. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Noa Belling, and we're talking about things that you can do to ease things like depression, anxiety, insomnia, making you feel more victorious, increase dopamine. And Noa, in regards to, we've been talking a lot about the hormone or neurochemical oxytocin, and it plays such a huge role in our ability to feel connected. And we were talking about how we feel so disconnected in the world, but then also you have our children. I mean, being connected with our children, the important to touch them and hug them. I mean, even as they get older, just because they're teenagers, you should not stop then that physical touch in order to be able to keep that oxytocin, that connection strong between individuals.
Absolutely. There are a few suggestions that I offer. One of them is absolutely to hug whenever we can those who we love, our significant others. And a big thing with touch is to notice how the touch is received, because touch is also, excuse the pun, a rather touchy subject. Is some people are open to receiving it, even if it's our children. They may not be in the mood for the hug. So the important thing is to give the hugs when we have good receptivity to it, and whenever we can, on our hellos and our goodbyes. I speak about marking transitions lovingly, and this could be a focused moment of really looking into each other's eyes to say, hello, how are you, how was your day, and take a moment to listen. This doesn't need to take a very long time. A lot of the time we do it in such a rushed way because we're so busy. We go, hi, how are you? Or we say, bye, love you. And that moment of actually pausing to look the person in the eye, to say those words, can make all the difference. Again, just feeding that oxytocin, nourishing our hearts, and as Stephen Porges calls it, our social engagement system. And so there's the hugs, there's marking transitions lovingly, and also play is a wonderful one, is finding opportunities for playfulness. That feeds all sorts of things, not only oxytocin. It is just excellent for our most evolved nervous system, that ventral vagal, as Stephen Porges calls it, which is associated with all sorts of advanced, our optimal brain functioning, our creativity, our ability to be compassionate, to be empathic, to really connect with each other in a harmonious and satisfying way. So playing anything that is eye to eye or competitive, anything from board games to ball games, really making that quality time, maybe taking a once a week regular slot to say this is our games night, or sharing sports with our children. So these are ways that we can include it to offset or to remind us of the good old traditions that came long before we were so drawn into our screens, to just keep us grounded, keep us in the world, keep us feeling connected with each other.
And
yes.
So we were talking about, we've been talking about how we can then change our brain or our thinking then through our body. So I'm curious, when we think of the brain, that is where we have then our memory stored. We remember events and things. Does this mean then that memory can be stored in the body as well?
Absolutely. The way that a somatic or body-mind therapist would work with a client is, if someone presents feeling, let's say, depressed, one of the questions would be, how and where do you feel it in your body? So you might notice really in the center of your torso. It may be a slumping or a heaviness. I would really tease out some of those descriptive words. And once a person is connected in with the feeling itself, what happens is the body has a memory that is linked with certain neural pathways. So we're now in the posture of our depression, and our brain is actually fooled that we feel this way. Emotions are like time capsules like that. Doesn't matter, even if we're simulating an emotion in our bodies, we believe our brain begins to believe we feel that way. And that can be really helpful to then say, what are some of the memories that come up as you're in that posture of your depression, that slump, that heaviness? How far back can you remember? Okay, there's a memory coming from high school. Can you remember anything even earlier? And it's not so much the specifics that are important, more a sense of, wow, I was really young when I first felt this way. When you are in the actively feeling an emotion, it can backdate as if it's happening today, and there can be a sense of, wow, I really felt this early in life, I'm not sure when. And then we might be able to use our imagination, because imagination is a really valuable tool that can create changes in our brain. So we might ask, what in the youngest memory did you really need? Imagine if you could bring in a really loving, supportive figure. Maybe it was a grandmother or a teacher, or an imaginary figure from a film or a superhero to come into your aid. And now imagine them being there in the home that you're in the place where you feel this real depression. And now notice how it feels to have this supportive person there. And this can be developed on to invite more people who are supportive, who would have a healing effect on us. And we might play with what kinds of messages would they give us. We might notice that spontaneously the person starts breathing a little more deeply as if they're a bit relieved. And so this link with our body memory is really encapsulated in the posture of our emotions. And we can work with that and we can transform it. So that image then of having a supportive person with us, we can then grow from there. Well, if I had that support, how might my body have felt then? How might my heart feel today? What might open up for me in my life? How might I see things differently? And it can be amazing to see how people really flow with this. You might think, wow, how can that work so quickly? But it's a process that really flows as we begin to be with our images, be with our feelings. That can date back really far. I also quote an example in the book in the chapter called Our Bodies Remember, about a birth experience that was played within a similar way, with covered by a blanket and recreating the scenario of being in the womb and emerging out from the womb and noticing what our bodies did and how they responded, and then going and interviewing our parents if we could to say, well, what was our birth experience, and discovering the absolute specificity of some experiences that we had experienced simply by the act of coming out of the blanket. So yes, I'm not sure if you're following that. There was quite some detail of going through the posture, using imagination, bringing in our imagination to support us, following the posture back out again, and then using the new posture as an anchor for positive states. So then we notice we're breathing more freely. Our movement feels a bit more fluid, not quite so stuck or tense. And then we can really say, well, this can be homework for the week. Let's play with this fluid movement. Let's play with breathing a little bit more, and then report back in a week what feels different, what might have opened up, and have that be an ongoing conversation with yourself. And perhaps if you're working with a therapist, that's it's a way to anchor our experience really deeply in our physical bodies, because sometimes if we just talk about our experience and we don't fully embody them, it doesn't fire up those neural networks, it doesn't fire up the way that our body and our brain are storing the experience, so that we can intervene in that network and create a shift, as opposed to just talking about it and not really touching into the felt level. Can you follow that?
Absolutely. So this is, and that's why it's important, to connect with your body, like you're saying, instead of just doing hundreds of hours of talk therapy, trying to analyze something. But since the body is so deeply involved in the events that have taken place in the past and how they the memories have etched themselves into our bodies, to sit and talk about it is not going to be able to reprogram that, since it is in the body, not necessarily in the mind, that the reprogram needs to take place. So you have events, powerful events, like you were talking about, the birth, pregnancy, and that it's something that your conscious mind may not be connected to, but then, like you're saying, you can access that then through your physical body, and then help to relieve some of the traumas or some of the emotions that are stored deeply into your body, through connecting it posturally in a way to kind of recreate emotions and kind of change the posture and live through that somatically, with your body.
Absolutely. And one of the things in the Mindful Body that I have written there are quick ways that we can create shifts to use on the spot to help us think more clearly, feel more relaxed. And there are also processes similar to the one that I spoke through to address various things from emotional memories to really early childhood experience, visualizations for self-esteem, all of them touching into the body experience. So hopefully the mindful body can be a great resource for being able to explore. And I see it doesn't take away your need for professional consultation, because that can be really important, especially when there has been trauma or really difficult experiences. It can just begin to open your eyes to the amazing way that our body not only holds our experience, but the amazing way that we can help ourselves to create shifts, or at least to begin a process that we might then decide, wow, I need some holding with this. I best consult with a professional to help guide me through this process.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Noa Belling. She's the author of The Mindful Body. We'll be right back. What I love about your book, that it's very practical. I mean, that it really gives you hands-on examples of what you can do to help you in your current state. We're gonna take a quick break. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Noa Belling, and you're listening to HealthMade Radio. We'll be right back.
All right, slating for the final segment.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Noa Belling. She's the author of The Mindful Body. And it truly is a mindful body, meaning that we are talking about how memories are stored in the mind, in the body, and how moving your bodies different ways can then release physical chemicals that impacts how you feel emotionally. What I see a lot in my work also is that people come with these ailments, anything from cancer to arthritis to fatigue, and I'm curious, in your profession, do you see that these ailments sometimes are connected to emotions, traumas that are stored in the past that needs to be released, and you can use the body then posturally to help to release these emotions to address the ailment?
There is wonderful blossoming research in this area. So 2 general examples is that our calmness, our mindfulness, our relaxation as a way of living life is linked with lower inflammation. And our self-compassion or ability to be more compassionate in life is linked with heart health and many other health benefits. And I use a method in my book which can also break down specific symptoms and ask, how are my symptoms a metaphor for life? So, for example, my head is really my center for thinking. So if I've got a pounding headache or a condition that's really affecting my head, I might be able to turn that into a metaphor and say, well, what is it about my thinking lately that's really been ailing or problematic or giving me challenges? Or in the chest, we have our lungs that breathe, which is our inspiration, or our ability to exhale, which means to let go and relax. We've also got our heart, which is to do with love, and the back of our heart, which is like the back door to our heart. We've got our arms that give and receive. And we can go through our whole body with a simple way of understanding the basic function of our body parts without needing to be a medical expert. Simply to know my legs walk, my feet have contact with the ground, my arms and my hands are about my ability to extend and give and receive in life. And then once I've asked myself what's the part of me and what's the function, then I might ask the next question of how can I turn that into a useful message. So what is it? Let's say that I have stubbed my toe. Most of the time, if anyone stubbed their toe, you'll know you're probably rushing around or in a bit of a chaotic state. And that stub of the toe can be a wonderful, very painful reminder to come into the present moment. And maybe it's a message as it pains and hurts and takes a while to recover, to take things a little bit slower and a bit more mindfully. That's a real simple example. When we have other ailments that affect us, like we might have abdominal issues, or we catch a cold or a flu, we might also ask, how am I run down, or how am I digesting my life if it's digestion that's impacted? I want to pause, though, to just point out something that's really important, because some of my clients come and say, well, have I caused this? Is it my fault? If my thoughts create my reality, have I caused my stomach troubles or my cancer or whatever it might be? And I really want to emphasize that there are greater things besides our own minds that cause our ailments, in my belief. Sometimes it's just that it's a life lesson that we need to learn for reasons that we may never fully understand. And even with the most difficult diagnosis, we can still turn it into a spiritual message. We can turn it into wanting to live life to the full, wanting to really reprioritize what is important for us in life. So it's about taking a positive view, looking for a way that we can turn the ailment into useful information and use that hand in hand with our healthcare practitioners. So we don't want to rush too quickly with ailments that could be potentially serious to only working with our mind, although it can be really helpful to go, wow, if I have headaches, I really have been slamming myself in my thoughts or comparing myself negatively with others or really beating myself up about something. And even the realization of that can have us have a little bit more compassion towards ourselves. And then I use a visualization where we can visualize our entire bodies and imagine ourselves wearing the most glistening, vital suit. So the various things we can play with to then bring our awareness, and also using the hand over the heart, bringing some loving compassion to.
Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt.
Full body moments as a way then to shift our attitude towards what our experience is, hand in hand with the medical interventions or natural interventions that we may be recommended to pursue.
And that's what I feel is the most powerful thing, is that when you work on an issue from several angles at the same time, meaning you're not just dealing with it physically, but you're dealing with it emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and recognize that it is all interconnected. You can't just look at it as being existing here in the physical world. It exists deeper at the same time while you're also addressing it on the physical world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I had one patient, for instance, I was dealing with breast cancer, and what was interesting is that she got the diagnosis right, it was her left breast, and she got the diagnosis right after she had a huge disconnect with her daughter, and the left side frequently being female, and breast obviously being nurturing. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, those were my thoughts. I don't know what your thoughts are in regard to something as serious as that.
Absolutely, I would agree, and that's a beautiful way of really breaking it down into even the sides of the body, with the left side being the more feminine and the right side being the more masculine, and the area of the body that's the most nurturing expression of the female, and the connection with the daughter. So I think that's a wonderful example of how our injuries and ailments can be metaphors for our lives. And we can also use them as guidance, as signposts for what direction we should be walking in towards what really matters in our lives.
Yeah, we had another patient that was diagnosed with cancer as well. Just dealing with a lot of one of my specialties is patients dealing with that have been diagnosed with cancer. She she was diagnosed with colon cancer, and she had this realization right when she was diagnosed. She said, "Oh, they found my dumping ground. They found where my trash was stored." So it's and that became one of her most healing moments, and she has just blossomed. Her life has changed, and she. This was many years ago that I've been working with her. That I was working with her, and she's cancer free now, but it had such a tremendous impact and shift in her life towards the better. So the ailment then became her wake up call, and time to then shift her mental, emotional, and spiritual direction.
Absolutely. And I'd like to connect back for a moment to the emotional processing. So when we receive a diagnosis, when we have a realization, we can also have our posture form in a way that feels appropriate around our fears or around the area, let's say it's the colon, and to be able to also, in the same way as we worked with the emotion, I used the example earlier of depression, really go back and ask, well, when did this dumping ground start? And what was really needed? And I'm so happy to hear that the client is cancer-free. And I know that this kind of intervention can sometimes contribute to that process of people really shifting deep patterns that are rooted very early in life. The other piece I wanted to mention, which is an area of research also growing, is epigenetics. I'm sure you know a lot about that. And it's also holding the awareness sometimes as we go into our postures that we might not even know the original cause or the origin for this particular symptom. It might be that we're actually carrying the dumping ground for, they say, up to 7 generations we can sometimes carry. We can really carry definitely the last couple of generations, affecting our cortisol levels, affecting how we respond to stress, affecting which symptoms manifest. And it can be very interesting to bring some mindfulness as we're in the posture to, wow, I wonder what else was carried in there. And some people who are highly intuitive might even get flash images that might relate back to war scenes or forced immigrations or really incidents that happened generations back, and it can also spark conversations in families to say, well, I want to know what happened. I want to know how I might be connected and how my symptom might be connected. And sometimes people instantly get, okay, this is where I dump everything in life and this is my life. And for other people, they need to dig a little bit deeper. And that kind of conversation in one's mind and helped by a facilitator can be really helpful to open our minds towards compassion to ourselves and how our bodies may manifest different conditions and how we might work with it towards living life to the full, really. The Mindful Body is available internationally at all bookstores or at most bookstores and online. You can also find out more by visiting my website, which is www.noabelling.com, and that is spelled Noabelling. You can also link in or go on to the Rockpool Publishing site as the publisher of this book. And that should contain most information that of upcoming events or more about the work that I do.
Oh, thank you so much, Noa, for being on the show today. I truly appreciate all the wisdom that you've shared and how people can use their body, their posture in order to be able to change how they feel, change their neurotransmitters, their hormones, to heal ailments that may be stored in the body. I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
That is it for today. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. Remember, check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. Is what you make it. Is what you make it.